Hey there, Stephanie Joy with All Things Social Security and the Law Practice of Joy Disability. Here's a short little segment from our recent live stream Q&A that we have every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the YouTube channel, All Things Social Security. Enjoy, and if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments, and I will be sure to get to them. Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.
Hey, guys. How is everybody? Shiloh, I see you are here bright and early with 5 million questions. We'll see. We'll get through them, but we'll probably jump around because I don't want to make everyone else not be heard. Are you? Dimple's in the house. Dimple says yes, she can hear us. Okay, good. Guys, you know Shannon Justice of Justice Disability. Shannon's in Kentucky, right? And Shannon, do you see the postings part? The
comments, yeah, I see them.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to put your website in there, so if anyone wanted to reach out to you, feel free. You know, you could just type it right in there. It'll come up on the page. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it'll let me.
Okay. Anyway, so Shannon's been here before a couple times. So we're gonna share your questions, and you can see maybe a couple different perspectives and stuff like that. All right, so let's go back up to the start. I'm going to start with what do you find with that, Shanna, about therapists recording things like that are told to them, and the issue that often happens, but not always, where they withhold those psychotherapy notes about those details. Those should really be in the mental status exam, but they're not. And then they say, well, I don't have to withhold. Under HIPAA, that's the little carve out they have, that little nasty carve out they lobbied for, where they don't have to share their notes. And so then a claimant might not have any of that evidence available to him because his own therapist, who's supposed to be looking out for him, chooses not to share.
Yeah, I've only had that happen with one therapist that she doesn't make any notes to be given out whatsoever. She only makes notes for herself, which is a problem. And unfortunately, when you're going through this process, you can't have that, because if nothing is provided to Social Security, it equates to them thinking you aren't getting treatment. It doesn't matter if you are, unless you. I mean, I don't know how. That lady I did talk to, she did send an email and say that she has provided forms for other people on that person's behalf, and then that if I want specific information, I'd have to pay for it, and I can't do that because then it looks as if I'm paying for her opinion, which is not what we're, it makes it a mess. So, but she did send me the forms or paperwork that she did fill out for the other people that, for whatever it was. So I appreciated that. But, and I know the lady, and I would like to send her more people, suggest that they see her, but without the records, it's not going to help anybody when it comes to Social Security. But you just gotta complain. And if you say things enough, hopefully somebody puts it in the paperwork. When you go to the therapist and doctors, you just gotta act like you've never told them before and make sure you're being very vocal about the problems that you got going on, and hope that they put it in there.
Yeah, it's almost like a numbers game. Say it enough, and sometimes it's going to get
exactly
in. So it's almost like a numbers game. What does that lady you're talking about? Does she give? Is she willing to? Does she automatically? Does she give anything such as, I've been seeing him from this date to this date for weekly therapy for anxiety? Did she say that?
She said that she would do that for me.
Okay. Because I think that she's probably been violating HIPAA by not giving, because that's the stuff that
I just don't see how they cannot give. Like, there has to. You would think that part of their requirements are to make some kind of note that is available to. I understand some notes not being available to the client because of the things that they might say,
about other people, like,
or whatever. But at some point, there should be something that is required to be given to at least third parties like Social Security that shows that they have been treating. Because otherwise, the only way to prove it is to get billing treatment, and that still isn't going to show what you're going there for. It doesn't help, show
right
that what the treatment was for, unless there's DSM, diagnosis on there, and most billing doesn't have that.
Right. And then, of course, the diagnosis, that little bitty piece of information they give,
it still
goes nowhere towards severity.
No.
It doesn't.
No.
So now you have no medical evidence of how severe.
You need at least a little detail. Yeah.
How it limits you in day-to-day functioning, right? One can file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. It's very easy. It's online. They even let you fax it in, and they have this whole little form where you explain, and you can attach any proofs. Like, I asked for my record. She said no, and she's allowed to withhold the psychotherapy notes. I think a lot of them do that because they feel like they they didn't do a very competent job and they might get delicensed. I think some of them just sleep and don't even take notes. So I think that's part of the problem too. But you can file it. And I think when they get a complaint, like if you say, I asked for records, she didn't give me the XYZ, I would look up the little blurb. It's readily available on HHS, government site and all that, about what part constitutes the stuff they can withhold and what part doesn't and they must provide. And I think mental status exam at each session is something that they have to provide. And then saying she doesn't do that. And I've asked her over and over again. And if they get enough on the same person, they could sanction them. I do believe, not 100% sure, but I do believe every time someone sends a complaint, you can't do it anonymously, and you probably need to attach something, maybe, I don't know, but a complaint where they're not going to go and do anything big, bad, biting. They send the provider a letter saying there has been a complaint against you for not providing the records required under the law. We suggest you do that. And so at least they get a little wiggle in the ear from the people that could actually bite them hard, which they don't seem to do unless there's like a ton of people complaining. But I was going to say, if everyone sent in the complaint, when it's justified, when you can't say she didn't send her psychotherapy notes per se because she's not required to, even if you beg her and sign off on them. Unlike physical doctors that have to send all their stuff. But if she didn't send mental status exam, it doesn't say anything about anything. She just said start and end date. Go look at the list. And I just think everybody should send that up so that the Office of Civil Rights can do its job. Because right now I feel like it's a useless, toothless animal that rarely does anything except in the very rare moment every couple of years it heavily sanctions some medical office for privacy violation or occasionally for not providing records at the proper cost and stuff. So I don't know. It is one of my pet peeves in this whole practice, Shannon.
Yeah.
It says that I've had people that were stuck under a bridge living for a good long spell that he shouldn't have been because of ignorant providers like that. Okay, Shiloh goes on, and then I'm going to look down and see if there's other questions, only because I don't want Shiloh to
I had one more.
accidentally usurp the whole thing. Yeah,
Well, or that person had made in that one of their comments was stated she turns the TV on. Okay, so that is one of those.
Is that down below?
Yeah, it's down below.
Well, go ahead.
But she mentioned they mentioned turn the television on. Well, that's one of those things that also can catch you up into with Social Security, because if you say that, it makes it sound like all people will say that they watch TV. Well, it makes it sound like you're doing nothing all day but watching television. In reality, most people that with mental health issues, especially, only have it on in the background. They can't sit still. Their mind's racing. They can't pay attention to it. They can't concentrate on watching a 30-minute show and keeping up with the story that's going on. And they tend to watch the same shows over and over again because they've missed it so much, and eventually they've watched the entire thing. But that's going to be one of those things that I don't like my clients to put on their forms, because it can come back to bite you later because they assume you can do it, like, sit there and just watch TV all day.
Yeah, and a lot of people do actually have the TV on all day. It's to keep the company, and they do look at it a little bit. But a lot of times also, and I think if this is true, you could say it if you qualify it and say, I'll have the TV on, but I can't remember a thing after 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Or it's in the background, so I'm not so lonely. I have tinnitus, and I just need that to try to, so I don't hear this so much. I mean, there's ways to skin the cat, but you cannot leave it blanket, like Shannon says, about I watch TV all day. Well, I wouldn't anyway. I know someone with purely physical problems, I might say, this is all I can do. I have to lie in a recliner for except for maybe 2 hours a day when I can get up, because my swelling in my legs is so immense, and my feet and the pain. But then I would also address if you're not being able to focus on it all that much and you're watching the same shows, because I don't even remember what it was last week when I saw it.
Because people, even with just physical pain, most of them are adjusting constantly to try to get comfortable. So they're still not concentrating and paying attention to that show. Yeah. So again, it's still, that plays to the off task issue. I'm
just scrolling down. We'll come back up to Shiloh's other things. I just want to see if there's another question so I don't make someone wait while Shiloh gets an entire consult on function of not that you don't deserve it, Shiloh, just saying. Let's see. Oh, I see Rain Gal is in the house, brand new, catching my first live stream. Nice to meet you, Rain Gal. Adam Solt is in the house, one of our favorites. Hi, Adam. Furry Plant, another fave in the house. Furry's got a question, so let me jump down here, Shiloh. I promise we'll get back up. Furry says, would you recommend notes during a phone hearing for a grandma being asked about grandson's conditions? Thank you, Ms. Stephanie. For a phone hearing, it's because you probably don't want to forget any of the points you want to make. Is that right, Furry? I don't really think that's a problem. And honestly, I don't know the judge is going to, if he doesn't ask and he doesn't initially say, I want no note taking during this, no notes available. I just want you to speak off the top of your mind, which I've never heard him say in a hearing, but I don't do phone hearings. I try to avoid them. I don't think it's a huge problem then. I mean, if he suddenly says out of the blue, by the way, if you have notes, get rid of them. Well, then you're going to have to do it because you kind of have to do what he says. Not that he can see you, but you don't really want to be dishonest. But I don't think he's going to say that, and he's certainly not going to see them. What do you think, Shannon?
There's nothing wrong with having notes. I have notes that I use at every hearing to make sure that I hit all the key points and all the issues that are relevant. And so there's nothing wrong with, if you're not represented, to do the same, just to make sure that everything's talked about that you feel is important.
Yeah, I will say that we are held to a different standard, though. We have our notes. We've actually given them the brief, so they know what. So we should for sure can. I think the concern is that the judge will think you could be reading your lawyer's directions. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's not really your answers. But
I mean, that's
again,
no different
Grandma,
than us prepping them before the hearings. I mean,
right, and we have to, and that's absolutely, and that's not a problem either. He would expect that, but I just understand there could be times when they might frown on it. Might doesn't even mean they will, because I think sometimes a person could say even.
I mean, don't read something, make a list and then read it off. Like, just make sure that everything is talked about.
It's because it's got to seem like it's coming from your own personal knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah. But of course, if you have pinpoints and you're going, oh, my knees, Judge, this is what happens with my knees, and then you're actually talking to him like this, you're clearly not reading. You just needed the reminder that you had to bring up about your knees when he says open-endedly, so tell me about your problems. You don't want to miss anything like that, because if they're going to deny, they always pick the things that you missed, even though you don't have 3 days to tell them everything. So I don't think that's a bad idea. And again, I don't think it's a big risk either. And I think for the reasons you say, Shanna, but you do want to also be as eyebally, eye to eye with the judge as you can while you're talking to him separately from, the fact that you have.